Happy New Year, friends. I wanted to just say that we were so excited to be with you on Sunday. And if you weren't there on Sunday, we're going to kind of go through just a little summary of what we talked about. As we came into the new year, we were talking about how many times we've had to endure through things. And maybe in 2017, you had to go through something that you had to trust God through. And we talked a lot about how when we're trusting God, He asks us to wait just a little bit and to trust and with patient expectation. And so in Psalm 40, we talked through verses 1 through 3, and I'm going to read them for you. Psalm 40, it says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and He heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. And through that psalm, we see a lot of times that in many of the psalms, actually, they're songs to God. They're songs of thankfulness and songs from in the bottom of a pit, maybe a pit of destruction or despair that someone finds themselves in. And King David, we find him in this psalm in the bottom of a pit, the pit that he can't seem to get out of himself. And so we see how he's stuck down there, and he's somewhere where he needs God. And he cries out from beneath the pit. He cries out to God, and God hears him. And then from within the pit, God asks him to wait, and asks him to wait expectantly, waiting for something that God is going to do in the future. And the patient expectation isn't just sitting idly by. Patient expectation is actually going about our daily lives, but trusting God in the midst of the things that we're going through as well. And we also talked about how a lot of times God asks us to wait and to watch what He's going to do. And eventually in this psalm, we see that God lifts David up out of the pit. He lifts him out of the pit. He puts him on a solid foundation, because sometimes in the pit our foundation is broken, it's weak, and it's frail, and we need someone to help us out of that pit and to steady our foundation and to create new steps for us as we go on this new path in life. We see how God establishes a new path, and in the establishing of a new path, He also puts a new song in David's voice. He puts a new song in David's heart that is actually a testimony of God's goodness, a testimony of God's faithfulness and what God has done in his life. And this new song, it talks and encourages other people to trust God in their own lives as well. So I wonder what this new song is in each of our lives in this new season in 2018. And what is this new song that we're trusting God for? Because just like this art of kintsugi art that we talked about, we also know that in this art form, people they have broken pots, and the pots are actually put back together with this gold lacquer. And this gold lacquer actually makes it even better than before. It makes it better than new. It makes it more valuable than before. So the new song, the testimony, the things that God is doing in your life and that God is bringing you through in life, that's actually going to be a testimony to what God is going to do in and through you, and how it can also encourage and speak to your friends and to other people in your life. And just thinking about this new song, you never know what God is going to do with this new season in your life. You never know what God is going to do with the things that maybe you're in the middle and struggling with. But I just want to encourage you to trust God and to believe that expectantly that He is going to come through, that He's going to work in and through your lives, and He's going to take those brokenness, the frailty, the things that we're sitting in that we may want to hide, and He's going to highlight them. He's going to use them for His purpose, and He's going to use them for something good and something in the future that you may not know what it is right now, but God has a plan for it. And so I actually wanted to introduce you to a couple of friends of mine. They actually have a story today that they're going to talk to you about God taking them through a season in their lives.
Thanks for listening to us. Just wanted to start this story. About 3 years ago, Jenny, my wife's mother, passed away from lung cancer. It was a tough time, but it wasn't just because of the cancer or the pain, but actually it just felt really random and sudden. When she was diagnosed, she wasn't a smoker. She didn't have any real big problems. And in fact, when it first started, it just was like a little pain in the back. And it progressed really, really quickly. Within months, she was in like a stage 4 cancer and then passed away. Through it all, we wanted to pray, and we did pray, and it was tough though, because there were times where I felt like I wasn't really sure if I'm praying really with much faith. I feel like sometimes there are these big things like cancer or whatever it is, things that seem like you can't really come back from. I just didn't know if I had the faith to actually pray for it. But we prayed anyways, and I think there's a lot of blessings with our family through all the experience, and we're thankful for that. But at the same time, I knew that in my heart, I had very little faith. I just couldn't really pray that she would have a complete healing of cancer. And now we come to this year, or last year, 2017, her father, back in May 2017, just retired, full of hope for the future, and in fact, just directly went onto a trip internationally. But on that trip, he actually had swelling in his body. When he came back, the doctors actually thought, well, it's just regular travel, wear and tear. Just, normally you go into high altitude and you're going to have swelling. But months went by and the swelling didn't go away. And in fact, it actually got worse. Started to have shortness of breath, started to basically just feel worse. Couldn't walk as far, things like that. And then fast forward to about September timeframe, things got much worse. He had to be hospitalized for basically his heart was working at about 20% the normal capacity of an average human. And at that time, I remember thinking, is this happening again? Is this random thing? He seems healthy. He doesn't have cholesterol problems. He's been walking with his walking group every day or every other day or some frequency. And is this happening again? I don't understand what's going on. But we wanted to pray. But this time, even though I still felt like my faith was still pretty weak in praying for these bigger things, I felt like God was calling us to pray with a faith that I definitely didn't have before. And we had friends pray, we had family pray, we had you, the church, pray, and I felt like God was giving us peace throughout that whole time. And it was still tough though. There were times when things seemed to get worse. At one point, he had to get this special IV that would go straight to his heart, this super expensive medicine that would artificially prop up his heart. He had a defibrillator and a pacemaker installed just to make sure he doesn't accidentally have a big problem. Things like that, every day, something new. But I felt like throughout that whole time, God was challenging us and asking us to pray for complete healing. It's something that I felt like I didn't before have the faith to do. But I was like, hey, you know what? Let's do this. Let's pray for complete healing.
I think it's amazing how God listens to you. Even when it feels like He's not, when you pray, He's really hearing us and honoring us as we ask Him. I mean, part of the story is that my dad isn't a believer, or he wasn't a believer, and I've been praying for him, for his salvation for 20 years. But I think God's love is such that He knows exactly what each person needs to help them come to Him. So for my dad, actually this time of all these heart issues was a time when God was really reaching out to him. It reminds me of that parable in the Gospels about Jesus looking for the lost sheep, leaving the others behind and looking for that one sheep. And that's how He was and is with my dad. What happened was my dad needed that place, that low point, before he could come towards Christ. I mean, in mid-December, my dad got hospitalized. That was a really low point, and the cardiologist basically said that, you only have days to live. There's got to be something done. We think you need a new heart. You need a transplant because you're not going to make it otherwise. And there was no hospital in that area that would do it. One of the few hospitals is in the LA area. So they had to keep him in the hospital because he was too sick to come out of the hospital. And they did a transfer by ambulance to LA. And then the process of getting a heart is a pretty long process. You undergo an evaluation. So he was in the hospital, having labs drawn, taking tests. It was like a week-long process. This is just to get on the transplant list. And it's not a guarantee that you'll even be qualified to get on the list. Once you even get on the list, they're saying, you know, it could be months to years of waiting to get a new heart. So they were waiting around Christmas, and he still didn't have any sign of whether he was going to be put on the list or not. But I think God used that waiting period, and he was like, what you really need is not the physical heart, you need a spiritual heart. So what happened was, God decided to use this acquaintance friend of my dad's who got put in the local area. He's not from the LA area, but he came here to LA. He was in an Airbnb near the hospital where my dad was, and he was able to come and visit to share the gospel and all the details in my dad's native language so he could fully understand. And he was able to pray with my dad, and my dad prayed to receive Christ. And it's amazing that God rewarded the persistence of prayer. And after he got that spiritual new heart, God decided to open the floodgates and bless him with his physical heart. So what happened was, a day after he got on the transplant list, and then a few days later, they said, we have a new heart for you. So my dad received the spiritual heart, he received the physical heart. God blessed him amazingly by not only did he have like a heart that was a good fit and a good match, it was like the head of the department for the heart surgery did his transplant. And then my dad got the transplant, and he's doing really well and recovering really well. He was walking the next day. And I think it's just amazing how God listens to us. Even when we don't feel like he could be listening, that constant coming to him is something that he desires and longs for. And he's gonna bless us when we come to him with persistent prayer.
Yeah, and also wanted to add that, not only is this a huge testimony to God, and it shows God's awesomeness and the glory of God, but I also just wanted to share this story because I wanted to encourage all of you to share your testimonies, just like what Pastor Sheri was mentioning earlier in her message this last Sunday. A lot of you who know me, I don't really like talking in front of people or like doing videos for things, but I felt that, we've had friends who are praying for us, and when we're sharing with people and we've had our friends share their stories with us, I just feel like inspired to do amazing things. And I just hope that you will also feel inspired by this story, but also to share your stories with other people. It doesn't have to be up here on stage, it doesn't have to be in a video, but you can. Talk to Ricky, he'll get you hooked up. But just share it with each other. And I'm thankful, and I'm waiting expectantly that this church is going to be, as we share more and more with each other, that we're going to be inspired to do so much more than just our daily grind. And so thanks for listening to us, and God bless.